Hey everybody, Dustin DePirek here, columnist Danny Graham. Coming to you from the other Memorial Stadium next to Millennium, I call it Millennium Falcon Assembly Hall.
Next to the other Assembly Hall.
Corman used to call it Spaceship Assembly Hall. I think it looks just like the Millennium Falcon, so it looks a lot like that. Anyway, first time since 2006, Indiana comes in here and wins. Actually, first Big Ten win in the Kevin Wilson era. First one since Bill Lynch's last game when they beat Purdue on a field goal by Mitch Ewald in overtime. And this was an interesting one. I mean, I think just to start to give Indiana credit, I mean, just to give them all the points that they deserve in this one. Really, everything that they hadn't done well in recent games is what they did well in this game. They finished the fourth quarter truly in every way that they could. I mean, they had a touchdown lead. With about, I'm trying to think exactly how much time they had left, about 8.5 minutes when they get the ball.
Right.
And it wasn't a drive that took up a lot of time, even though it was played almost entirely on the ground. But it was a different type of drive. It kept the chains moving, kept the clock moving to at least some degree, and was a truly just thorough drive, I thought. And I think that was sort of a microcosm of everything they did really in the fourth quarter was that drive right there.
And I agree. You know, when the offense really had to try and do something to put the game away after basically sleepwalking through the second half, Illinois came out in a three-man defensive front, and how much that contributed to Indiana just deciding to run it right down their throat, whatever. They were well-executed plays, and then the touchdown was an especially well-executed play where Nate Sudfeld, a true freshman playing quarterback, went through his progressions on an option read, and one of those progressions allowed him to find Shane Wynn wide open in the end zone. Yeah. It was really a nice play. I mean, in the sense that he almost looked like he was ready to tuck it and run, and then all of a sudden he pulls up and throws.
And Wynn had just kind of faded back behind two guys. I mean, it seemed like they were sort of keying on the run, and then Wynn just sort of just slid back.
The run look helped free Wynn up.
Sure, absolutely.
And so it was just a really nice play, really nice call. At that point, they had two really nice calls for touchdowns. I like the fake reverse, or excuse me, the fake left screen right call in the first half too. But now, look, Indiana's offense went 1 for 13 on third down today and struggled a lot of the time. It was an interesting game in that sense, where Indiana's really been sometimes outplaying the opposition or outgaining the opposition, but not getting the breaks, not getting the turnovers, not getting the big penalty call, all that kind of stuff happened in their favor today.
Yeah, we didn't really notice just how. At no point did we feel like Indiana was being outplayed in this game necessarily, but just kind of how a couple big plays sort of turned this. Obviously, there was the fumbled punt by Illinois set up Indiana, with a very short field. Also had another fumble that set them with a short field that ended up turning into a field goal. But you see how many yards Indiana averages. I think 450 a game. Right. 450 yards a game. They finished with 292 in this one.
Well, and Illinois set up 3 straight Indiana scores.
Yeah.
Because Sudfeld was gonna be a 3 and out. Sudfeld's, and remember I saw this. A guy broke open late, but he didn't want to throw across his body. I said that's a good play. Just run out of bounds. He did the smart thing, and then an Illinois defender and one of their best, and Buchanan, didn't do a smart thing. He hit him way out of bounds, way out of bounds. So 15 yards, the drive keeps going, and Sudfeld made him pay on the very next play on a deep post to Cody Latimer for 48 yards to set up a touchdown. So Illinois created that opportunity. Illinois fumbles a punt. That creates the next touchdown. Yeah. Illinois fumbles on their 20 and creates the field goal attempt for Indiana in the second half that Mitch Ewald made. So Illinois did almost everything humanly possible to give the game to Indiana. And for a while, it looked like Indiana wasn't going to take it. But that drive that you mentioned in the fourth quarter, where it's like, okay, it's a one-score game. Offense has the ball on their own 40. This is it, guys. I mean, if you want to finish out a game, this is when the offense has to step up and go finish out the game and make it a 2-score game and use some clock and eat up some clock in the process, and that's exactly what they did.
Really interesting stuff from Kevin Wilson on that drive. The first play, which I thought was probably one of the most imaginative plays of the day. They had Isaiah Roundtree. Was kind of lined up as sort of almost like kind of a wingback type of situation. He kind of came on a sweep and got a real big hole turned into a 9-yard gain. And Roundtree's been just sort of used. He's been moved around a little bit more than the rest of the tailbacks. He's been working with wide receivers a little bit more lately, and but they did line him up. Did bring two tailbacks out there, and that drive just started to start.
It was fresh legs, and that was another thing.
And it really kind of started. It started kind of a domino effect because then they were way ahead of the chains at 2nd and 1, and Roberts gets a big run, and then all of a sudden it starts moving, and Illinois starts to fade a little bit, and it turned into just a brilliantly worked drive. But what was funny about that first play is I asked Wilson, because I hadn't seen that play before. He says, well, actually, we ran it early and we got like 2 or 3 yards out of it. And I asked Latrell, I'm like, you sure you want to do that?
Latrell's like, yeah, we see from their defense.
Yeah, what we see from their defense, we think we hit them with this. And Wilson's like, all right, be my guest, and it worked. It was really well done. I think it's watching play calling with this team has been very interesting because they do take chances. Mostly. There's times when they go too conservative. Times when it's kind of back and forth. I mean, it's tough to pin down just really what they're doing sometimes. But they, when they get a rhythm, when they know what they're doing, when they start hitting, they can do some pretty imaginative stuff. And that was just a really good start. And then it was again, like you said, they brilliantly put together a play call at the end with the pass to win. It was just really a top to bottom, well executed drive, well called drive by Seth Latrell and Kevin Wilson. I'm not even exactly sure who gets all the play calls at this point, but clearly Seth has some degree of autonomy there, and I guess runs it by.
And a case in point, as you were contrasting things, they were conservative after they got the fumble on the 20.
Very.
It was 3 straight D'Angelo Roberts runs. They got 9 yards, but you need to
9
get 10.
9 yards is not enough.
You had to kick the field goal at that point. So that was a more conservative series. But they mixed it up pretty well most of the day, I thought. And here's the thing. I mean, Kevin Wilson made this point post game as well, and I think it's a very valid one. He said something that he really liked that maybe not a lot of people might take away from this game. He says, you're up 2 touchdowns and it looks like you're going to win it. He said, but I really like that stop at the end of the game where they held Illinois out of the end zone because, and Kevin knows this, I mean, his team worked a onside kick against Ohio State and nearly came back and pulled that one out, and you never know. And he really liked the fact that instead of just kind of letting them score and then
they stiffened up.
The defense said, Ryan Phillips had a huge sack, there at the end.
Monster.
And
humongous.
That was one of 7
that
sacks.
That really clinched it. Mm-hmm.
That's right. That was one of 7 sacks for Indiana today, and that was one of the better elements of Indiana's play. Most of those sacks came from the front 4. And that was impressive. I mean, almost all of them. A couple of guys who've been playing really, really well all year played really, really well again. Adam Raplogle,
Greg Heben's been
a
beast.
Greg Heben are the 2 guys.
Greg Heben as a safety is something that obviously fits. They obviously just based on necessity, as Wilson alluded to, played him at corner before. Yep. At the end of the day, that's just not his bag.
Well, and then when they had him
he's
at
a good
nickel,
athlete, but he's not going to be able to beat anybody straight. Nickel, he was solid, but
he wasn't on the field enough.
Especially when there was base offenses.
They weren't able to keep him out there.
Yeah, and safety has been just a great fit for him because he can fly around a little bit, but he doesn't have to straight cover people. Like putting Heben on the best wide receiver the other guys got. That's not where he's best, as a straight cover guy. I mean, he's really good in coming up against the run, just really good at being where he's supposed to be. If he's covering tight ends or if he's covering your third receiver, he can absolutely do that. You don't necessarily want him on the best guy, but this allows him to do a whole bunch of different things, be very versatile. He had 11 tackles in the first half.
He had 13 today, 7 and 6. He had a tackle for loss as a safety. Yeah, had a tackle for loss. And I know he has says a fumble recovery as well. He recovered a fumble. That's right. And he also, I think it was really early in the game, I saw him just plant a guy on a return. I mean, he plays special teams too. It comes down and just wails on people.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just been an outstanding player. One of those guys, I don't know if Indiana players, I mean, we'll see how Indiana finishes out the season. Indiana players sometimes don't get much notice for all Big Ten honors and that kind of stuff just because they play for Indiana, let's be honest. I mean, if Indiana finishes at the bottom of the standings, it's harder to get spots on the all Big Ten teams.
And for that matter, it's really, I mean, quick side note, I mean, voting for any all Big Ten, or any all conference, any, post-year awards, I mean, you got to realize it's the people that are voting on them, the people that spend all day watching
their own team, exactly.
And whoever it is, I mean, that's us too. Trust me, as I've said before, I was way more qualified as a 12-year-old to have my Heisman Trophy.
But he's been playing. I've seen a lot of Big Ten football, and he's playing like, somewhere on that all Big Ten team, first, second, third team, whatever, wherever you put him. He's playing at that caliber right now.
Yeah, no, this game I think really, it's just big for a kind of a demonstrated performance for this team. And it's very easy to critique this Illinois team. It's not very good.
Well,
top to bottom, it's 2-5.
Illinois is really fragile psychologically.
Yeah,
right now.
But what this meant for Indiana and what it didn't have before this week is demonstrated performance that it could look at and say, see, we can do that.
Yeah.
We can do that in a fourth quarter. We can get through this. And whether or not, again, they're going to be playing the rest. They will not play a team this bad the rest of the way. And I'm not trying to rip on them, but frankly, there's, they've got Iowa, Wisconsin, Penn State, Purdue, left on the schedule here. There is not a team this bad left on the schedule. But just the fact that they were in a position where they needed to close somebody out and did it
on the road
is something that they'll be able to take with them the rest of the season. Whatever situation, if they find themselves again with a lead in the fourth quarter, they're going to have this to draw back on. And for that matter, they'll have it going forward after this. It's something that they'll be able to actually look at and say, we did this. And that is something they did not have going into the
we talked a little bit about it earlier in the week. There's belief, and then actually doing something to reinforce that belief, and then you have a much stronger foundational belief. And I think that's part of what we saw constructed today.
Yep. That is all. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.